Happy Election Day.
Happy Election Day.
All right, we will begin this morning's session with Pledge Allegiance led by Commissioner Boyce.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. The Clerk of Courts.
Resolution number 788-17. Resolution authorizing a contract modification with Management Technology Group, LLC, to provide a mutually agreed to termination of the contract deliverables and to establish a final fee payment schedule, a decrease of $90,000.
Good morning, Commissioners. Adam Lukemp on behalf of the Board of Commissioners and E-Governance Board, and with me today is
Anton Way on behalf of the Clerk of Courts.
Good morning.
Good morning. Management Technology Group was hired to assist with the planning and procurement of a new court case management system. This contract modification provides a mutually agreed upon termination of 3 contract deliverables and has been approved by the E-Governance Board. Pending any questions, we request approval of this resolution.
If there are no comments or questions, move for passage of Resolution 788-17.
I'll second.
Moved in second and voting, Commissioner Boyce?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Grady?
Yes.
Resolution number 788-17 has been adopted.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Domestic Relations.
Resolution number 789-17. Resolution authorizing a contract with ThoughtWell to conduct focus groups in the amount of $24,350.
Good morning, Commissioners. Shuba Lembach, JDAI Program Director. This resolution is requesting a 5-month contract with ThoughtWell to conduct focus groups with youth and families. The goal is to gather information from the stakeholders of the juvenile justice system and their perspective so that we can continue to improve the system as we have been doing as part of JDAI for the last 10 years. Funding for these focus groups has been provided by a grant from the Annie E. Casey Foundation. Pending any questions, the court requests approval of this resolution.
If there are no comments or questions, move for passage of 789-17.
I remember the work starting, and this is a long time that we've been doing such great work. So thank you for that.
Thank
and
you.
I'll second the resolution.
Thank you.
Moved in second and voting, Commissioner Boyce?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Grady?
Yes.
Resolution number 789-17 has been adopted.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Sheriff.
Resolution number 790-17. Resolution authorizing a transfer of appropriations and a purchase order for the return of prisoners.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dave Masterson, Director of Administrative Services for Sheriff Baldwin. This resolution authorizes a transfer of appropriations and the approval of a purchase order to cover the necessary expenses incurred in the pursuit and transportation of prisoners. These appropriations cover expenses for transporting 58 prisoners during August and 34 prisoners during September. The itemized monthly reports have been submitted and approved by the Sheriff, and pending any questions, ask approval of this resolution.
If there are no comments or questions, move for passage of 790-17.
Second.
Moved in second and voting, Commissioner Boyce?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Grady?
Yes.
Resolution number 790-17 has been adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, how was the experience the other night at softball?
Sensory overload.
Dave and I have been spending a lot of time with softball together here lately, so that place is a zoo, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Take care. All right, we're going to move on past Job and Family Services for a bit until we get the sign that our guests are here, and we're going to move to Animal Care and Control.
Resolution number 792-17. Resolution authorizing a contract modification to the agreement with Shelter Outreach Services of Ohio for veterinarian services.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chris Long, Deputy County Administrator. The Shelter Outreach Services of Ohio provides veterinary services to our animal shelter, and this resolution will allow for a contract modification to extend those services through the end of the year into the beginning of next year. Pending any questions, request your approval.
If there are no comments or questions, move for passage of 792-17.
Second.
Moved in second and voting, Commissioner Boyce?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Grady?
Yes.
Resolution number 792-17 has been adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Economic Development and Planning.
Resolution number 793-17. Review of petition to annex 5.96 acres from Franklin and Norwich Townships to the City of Columbus, case number ANX-21-17.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jenny Snap, Economic Development and Planning. This resolution is to consider an expedited Type 2 annexation petition of 5.96 acres from Franklin and Norwich Townships to the City of Columbus. The area to be annexed includes property located at 3451 Trabue, 3459 Trabue, 3467 Trabue, 3475 Trabue, and 3485 Trabue, and 3495 Trabue. So there's 6 parcels. Those are south of Trabue Road, west of Riverside, and east of Interstate 270. Petition was filed by Agent and Attorney David Hodge of Underhill and Hodge. David is in attendance if you have any questions. On behalf of the property owners Jeffrey and Deborah Forelli, Dallas Mobile Home Village, and Angelo Dallas. 63.7% of the site's perimeter is contiguous to the City of Columbus, and the City passed ordinance number 2695-2017 on October 16, 2017, indicating the services that will be provided once the annexation is approved in a statement regarding incompatible land uses and a zoning buffer. The petition meets all statutory requirements outlined in Section 709.021 of the Ohio Revised Code, and pending any questions, we request your approval.
If there are no comments or questions, move for passage of 793-17.
I will second.
Moved and second in voting, Commissioner Boyce.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Grady.
Yes.
Resolution number 793-17 has been adopted.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Jenny. Public Facilities Management.
Resolution number 794-17. Resolution authorizing appropriation adjustments for various construction projects.
Good morning, Commissioners. Darla Reardon, Interim Director, Public Facilities Management. PFM is requesting a transfer of existing funds and supplemental funds that will support the completion of several year-end construction activities. OMB is supportive of this request. Included in the various projects are funds to replace a domestic hot water boiler in the Juvenile Detention Center. Also in JDC, funds will be used to upgrade radio communications equipment in that building to remedy weak signal reception. Next, to replace the auditorium sound system in this building, which is no longer functional or repairable. And lastly, the majority of funds will be used to complete the first steps required to modernize the elevators in this building. The elevators are original to this building and are recognized as being at the end of their life cycle. The monies we are asking for today will allow for the preparation of the drawings, approvals, and engineering. Pending any questions, we ask for your approval of this action.
Thank you, Director. One quick question. Do we have a facilities master plan where we sort of have a standing of all the future projects needed with all of our facilities and just something that sort of illustrates, you know, the schedule for addressing them, or is it sort of a case by case as needed?
We have a CIP plan that is put together annually, and we've begun our discussions for 2018 with OMB, and it goes out into years into the future of outstanding potential projects.
But I guess when I think of the capital improvements plan, I think of appropriations for larger projects as opposed to prioritizing based on need issues. You know, so for example, you said the auditory system in the building. You know, I'm trying to just assess where that fits in from a priority standpoint versus the radio communication system in DYS that you talked about, in the youth juvenile facility that you talked about. Have we looked at those aspects? So it's not so much capital as it is sort of planning, facility planning kind of.
You're talking about maintenance and operations of all of our facilities, which we've done some of, and I know
Yes.
Administrator has.
Kenneth Wilson, County Administrator. Commissioner Boyce, President O'Grady, Commissioner Brown. The county does have an existing facilities master plan that was done a number of years back, and it served as guidance when we looked at the Judicial Service Building, for example, and mapping out what the county's needs would be over the next couple of decades. So that plan was done a number of years back. included in this resolution would authorize me to enter into a contract modification with Pizzuti Solutions for additional master space planning services. And it will allow us to update our facilities master plan as it goes into development. That's a part of this resolution that's being presented by Interim Director this morning.
Thanks, Administrator. I mean, that's why I was looking to highlight that. I just wanted to focus on the broader thought process about, so much what you're saying today as much as it is just that broader thought process. And it really goes back to, I don't want to belabor this, but it really goes back to our conversation about the Board of Elections and thinking of the needs as a county long-term and rethinking them constantly. And so I'm glad I wanted to kind of highlight and focus on the facilities master plan part of it, so that this didn't seem like, okay, year-end kind of things, we're going to do a bunch of projects to try to, it's really more thoughtful and more strategic, and I want the public to know that's how we're approaching this, as opposed to, just sort of, putting, Band-Aids on issues. So thank you.
Kevin, I think since I've been here and since Commissioner O'Grady's been here, I think we've been very thoughtful about the way in which we approach master planning of our campuses and how we approach the ongoing maintenance in years past and generations in the past even. I'm not sure that was always the case, but I know in the last 12 years since Ken and Zach have been here, and since we've all been here, it's been very thoughtfully planned in terms of a whole campus look of all of our campus plans.
Yeah.
And looking at the maintenance of these buildings as they age is really an important piece of what we do. And as the county is aging, as the buildings are aging, we have to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
and we have been very thoughtful about it.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. I totally agree. From my short time here, and I can see the energy that's been obviously put into some thoughtful planning. But two things. One, I really, because I'm new, I need to be more familiar with the master plan itself, and I haven't actually seen that document, and so I wanted to kind of just throw that out there. But
yeah.
Two, I think it's important for the public to hear and see, and I'm always surprised at how folks do watch this and then ask me a question when they see me on the street. And so I think, I think there's value in some public exposure to some of the work that you all have done in the past, which is significant, and also kind of how we're looking at this in the future. Because this is the last point I'll say, we can let this go, but I put a post last night of the new jail facility we're building. And I was sharing with one of the deputy administrators this morning. I got a ton of feedback, not all positive. In fact, most of it negative. And my response, I'm going to take the time to respond to most of those people today, but my response is going to be, I want you to think of this in a broader scope. And let me share with you, A, what we're doing, or how we look at this, broad brushstroke, and then now let's focus on the jail and what all the great things that are going to come from the jail itself. But I also want to talk to you about, what our responsibility is as Franklin County, how we're prioritizing these responses. Not that we just put a bunch of stuff in a bowl and said, okay, it's going to be a jail this week, or it's going to be a morgue next week. That this is really a thoughtful experience, and most of which, as Commissioner Brown alluded to, most of it has been really thought out over the last few years, not anything new. So, anyways, I just think there's value. Again, like I said, I got so many sort of hits, from my posts. I thought this is an opportunity to talk about facilities master planning that the county does and how we look at this. So, thank you.
Thanks, you're right up. Thank you. Yeah.
If there are no further comments or questions, move for passage of 794-17.
Second.
Moved and second in voting. Commissioner Boyce?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Grady?
Yes.
Resolution number 794-17 has been adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darla. Homeland Security and Justice Programs.
Resolution number 795-17, resolution authorizing a professional services contract with Life and Safety Training Services, LLC, for provision of basic first aid, AED, and CPR training and certification services through the JAG grant program in the amount of $24,000.
Good morning. Greg Plants with Homeland Security Regional Communications.
Morning, Greg.
Good morning. This one really stole all my thunder in reading that title. There's not a lot more to it. I think it is a 3-year contract. This training is provided to our volunteers in public safety service, potential graduates that work as volunteers to assist our law enforcement and other efforts around the county events that we have. So pending any questions, we request your approval.
Outstanding. I just want to take a minute to recognize Kathy Crandall, who was recognized on Saturday by ETSS as a community advocate for new Americans and immigrants and refugee work. And you know, this is one of the pieces of that puzzle that make us so effective in areas, and I just want to take the time because she was recognized and honored with an award, and fittingly, and I know when she accepted it on behalf of the entire division in Franklin County. So I just want to highlight that, and with that, move for passage of 795-17.
Second.
Moved and second in voting. Commissioner Boyce?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Grady?
Yes.
Resolution number 795-17 has been adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, back to JFS, Job and Family Services.
Resolution number 791-17, resolution approving a subaward agreement with City Year Columbus in the amount of $120,000.
Good morning.
How are you, Commissioners?
Good morning, Charles.
I'm doing great, thank you. Managed to stay dry. Charles Noble, Chief Strategy Officer, Job and Family Services. City Year's Whole School, Whole Child program takes a holistic approach to meeting behavioral and academic needs of at-risk youth enrolled in Trevitt Elementary and Champion Middle Schools on the Near East Side. City Year's highly trained AmeriCorps members work with teachers to identify students who would benefit from the program. City Year staff provide individualized support, tutoring, and additional resources in the classroom, and help facilitate after-school enrichment programs and school-wide initiatives to foster a more positive learning environment. They monitor attendance and student engagement, provide behavioral support and development, and track academic performance in both math and English. Last school year, 80% of students who started in the Whole School, Whole Child program off track in English, which represents either grades of D or F, finished the program on track, which means they achieved A's, B's, or C's. While 100% of students who started off track in math ended on track, additionally, 79% of students who received socio-emotional interventions over the course of the year improved by 4 points or more on their DESA strength assessment, a nationally recognized behavior rating scale. Under the new contract, City Year will serve approximately 738 students at Trevitt Elementary and Champion Middle Schools through September of next year. These sorts of programs are so important. They provide really great hands-on and wraparound exposure. So today we've asked Colin Taylor to share some of his experiences with the program. Colin is in his second year with AmeriCorps working at Champion Middle School. And then if there are any additional specific questions that Colin can answer, we have Daryl Robinson, who's the program manager for City Year.
That's great. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. So, like I was introduced, my name is Colin Taylor. I serve as a second-year AmeriCorps member at Champion Middle School, and I'm just here today to kind of paint a picture of my City Year experience. So I want to talk about the number one thing that entails in my job, which is relationship building. So I started my first year last year. I moved from Florida, and I was looking for an organization that I could work for that would allow me to be in the classroom, be able to build one-on-one connections with students, and I found that in City Year. So City Year prepared me with different practices and models and ways to basically get to know students and start pouring into their lives. And so I was able to really get to know students in the classroom every day, be a consistent, stable person for them to get to know. Along with academic support and tutoring, we also do a lot with behavior and leadership and attendance, as was mentioned. One specific student I have in mind is Lawrence, and I want to share what we call a starfish story, which is basically a story of impact. So Lawrence was a part of my leadership team, and he was more of the shy student that stayed under the radar. He didn't have major behavior issues, but what I saw in him is what basically I see in a lot of students is they need that extra push. They need that person to speak encouragement into their lives. And so Lawrence started standing out to me. We would meet every week for about 30 minutes during lunch, and I was able to start talking to him about growth mindset and self-confidence. Over the year, we were able to have different activities which encouraged him to build up his confidence and overcome his fear of public speaking. And last year at our Red Jacket Bar, which is a huge fundraising event we do in Columbus, he actually was on stage with me and spoke, and we were able to have that moment together where it was kind of a full circle moment. All of our hard work had paid off, and he was on stage in front of hundreds of people. So overall, this is just one example of how we're able to be there for students and to play that middleman ground. You know, teachers are really stretched thin with behavior management and having to balance so many things. It's a juggling act, and City Year is just there to support them, build relationships with the teachers, the staff, as well as engage community partners. So overall, I'm just thankful to be a part of City Year, serving my second year at Champion Middle School, and I just thank you guys for the funding.
Colin, I think the story is wonderful, and I just wonder, what age child is Lawrence now, and what grade is he?
So Lawrence is 14 years old, and he's in the 8th grade at Champion Middle School.
How's he doing now?
He's doing well. I get to see him, which is the beauty of serving a second year.
Yeah.
He's building relationships with the new City Year in the 8th grade, and I'm really excited for his future.
So do you get to stay in the same school 2 years or more than 2 years in the program? How does that work with what you're doing?
So the second year is an option that some core members decide to take on. It's not a guarantee that we stay in the same school. So I was lucky enough to be able to stay at Champion, but I have a fellow core member who started at Champion and is now serving a second year at Mifflin High School. So it's not guaranteed, but we do stay in the same schools.
It's such a great help for the teachers in the schools, especially in Columbus, where the teachers are stretched so thin. In all schools, it's the case, but I know with our Columbus public schools, the teachers are stretched so thin, and it's wonderful to have you and the other AmeriCorps Volunteer City Year is such an important program. So thank you, and thank all of you from City Year who do such a great job.
Thank you so much. I will pass that message along. We're actually meeting downtown today for training, so I will let them know.
The only thing I'll add is that, you know, I want to focus for a second on the two schools, Trevitt and Champion, where statistically many of those families are facing overwhelming odds. And so here's an opportunity where the county can invest in a preventative measure, preventive way and strategy that really gives these young people with many hurdles and obstacles to overcome additional resources to overcome those. And so I was saying earlier how I was getting a lot of feedback on the facility we're building, and people were saying, I'll be doing prevention work, and I'll be doing, and I said, we are. You know, there are lots of things that we do to try to support communities that tend to be statistically at risk. And here's an example where those two schools face overwhelming statistics, and we're providing extra resources to try to mitigate the impact of those statistics. And this isn't a good example of that. It's a small grant, but it goes a long way, and your work with that young man is critical. I used to, just real quick, I used to coach basketball middle school, and we used to play against Champion all the time. And I would love to interact with those young people, knowing that statistically the odds that they face are so incredible. And I thought, man, they're champions in their own rights because they don't even know that they're overcoming these obstacles by being in school and focusing on what they're doing and at the time playing sports. And so thank you for what you do. I join in the comments of Commissioner Brown.
Too many of our partners focus on that core piece of what it is that we do that they care about, and they don't focus on the larger picture of what it is that county government does. and so they miss the fact that we are so involved in so many different aspects of people's lives, and so they you know,
They pick the one thing
Yeah,
that they
and
see
so-
at that moment.
And-
so they're focused on the fact that we do economic development, and they don't focus on the fact that we have to be involved in corrections and you know, trying to turn people's lives around. They focus on corrections and don't focus on what we're doing to help people stay away from the corrections. They focus on economic development and forget about all these other things that we have to do and the ways that we impact people's lives in the community. And so thank you for coming this morning and reminding us, you know, and reminding us that we need to remind folks what it is that we do in the community. So thank you.
I think working with our children and families is the basis of the prevention work that we get to do, need to do, have a responsibility to do in prevention work, and their families. Because if not for that, you know, corrections is not going to work, nothing's going to work, economic development's not going to work. If we're not working with these kids and their families, it's nothing. So thank you all at City Year for doing what you're doing, and thank you, Charles. I mean, our safety net services are critical,
Thanks.
and I've been in Trevitt,
Yeah.
and the challenges are big, and Champion too, so, yeah, thank you.
If there are no further comments or questions, move for passage of 791-17.
Second,
Moved and seconded voting, Commissioner Boyce?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
yes.
Commissioner O'Grady?
Yes.
Resolution number 791-17
Thank you.
has been adopted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Purchasing.
Resolution number 796-17, resolution approving purchases for various Franklin County agencies in the amount of $3,100,520.50.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Carl Cuse, representing the Purchasing Department. The resolution before you requests your approval of 153 purchase orders. These purchase orders have been pre-certified as availability funded by the county auditor. Pending any questions, I recommend their approval.
I must have an old resolution, because I
I
have
do
151 purchase orders.
Yeah, it got changed
What's-
after briefing.
What's the current amount, Carl?
There are
$3,100,520.
$3,100,520.50.
If you have the briefing one, it got changed.
Yeah, I didn't get the...
Because
okay,
I
okay.
had it at briefing and it was the wrong one. And,
We added a couple since briefing.
no, we had the wrong, it was
There were two
an
purchase
earlier one, there were
two
others
purchase orders added
right,
for travel.
at briefing, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Correct.
If there are no comments or questions, move for passage of 796-17.
Second,
Moved and seconded voting, Commissioner Boyce?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
yes.
Commissioner O'Grady?
Yes.
Resolution number 796-17 has been adopted.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carl. The Board of Commissioners.
Resolution number 797-17, a resolution approving the issuance of revenue bonds, Trinity Health Credit Group, Series 2018-OH of the County of Franklin, Ohio, in an original aggregate principal amount not to exceed $110 million, and consenting to and approving the execution of bond documents.
Morning, Commissioners. Glenn Pratt with Dinsmore and Scholl. I apologize for the way I sound. I'm fighting a cold and losing. With me is Brett Justice, who's the Senior Vice President for Strategy and System Development for Mount Carmel. We are serving as Issuers Counsel for the Hospital Commission for this because there's out-of-state bond counsel. The resolution before the Commissioners would approve the issuance of hospital facilities revenue bonds not to exceed $110 million to finance facilities at capital improvements located at various locations of Mount Carmel in Franklin County. The majority of the money will be spent at Mount Carmel East, St. Anne's, and Grove City campuses. As is with the case with other financings like this, the bonds do not constitute indebtedness of the county. There's no pledging of the full faith and credit or taxing power of the county, and Trinity and Mount Carmel fully indemnify the county for any costs or expenses incurred as a part of the transaction. With that, we're happy to answer any questions the Commissioners may have about the transaction. And one thing, after consideration of the resolution, there's something I wanted to mention for information purposes after we're through with this piece of business.
Right.
Great. Well, first of all, let me say thanks for coming today, and I did have a chance to talk to several representatives of the hospital, but I want to just be clear, you know, even though this is a conduit issuance from Franklin County standpoint, and we don't really have a direct connection to the credit, any type of financial or issuance questions are serious, even if we're a one-off from that. And so a couple of things I just want to point out, and maybe you can help me, because when I last spoke with someone at the hospital, they didn't necessarily have the answer to it, so you should be prepared, because they were supposed to pass these questions on to you. First is I don't see a financial advisor listed in your transaction team. And so is it true that you don't have an FA as part of your bond syndicate?
We're only issuers counsel for the hospital commission, but I do understand that there is a financial advisor. You're talking about a financial advisor for Trinity and Mount Carmel?
Yeah, for the transaction. It should be for the transaction.
Melio and Company is the financial advisor for Trinity.
Okay. Should be listed as part of the project team, and it's not. So just as a FYI, it's a very, very important element of this, because this is my second question, which is then there are two underwriting firms, Goldman Sachs and BAML, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and this is a quite sizable issuance. And my concern is the same I had on the last issuance, is that when you have a transaction of this size and you have one or two firms on it, and particularly these are large mega firms or international firms, you tend to not get the best pricing because you don't have the comparable element, and they're driving the pricing. You know, they're giving you a scale of what these similar bonds would pay on the market, and so that's what you sell them for. But when you have a grouping of underwriters, you get each one of them submit pricing, and then you come up with basically the average or the comparable, of them, and so you get a little bit of tick on the pricing. And so when I see one or two firms, particularly the larger national, they give you a scale and that's it. And so what that means is it would beg the question, are you getting the best pricing?
Sure.
And so I just want to throw that out there, because this is the second transaction I've seen like this with the same kind of structure from the hospitals, and I'm just concerned about that structure. Okay. This happens to be an area of my expertise, and so I know this to be fact. I'm not just looking at it and just kind of throwing out questions. I really think there can be a material element with a grouping of firms on there to look. I mean, that's how they're all structured for the most part, particularly of this size and this type of credit. So, care to just maybe give some feedback?
Sure. I did, when I was alerted that this was a concern on the last transaction, I did raise this with the Trinity folks, and I understand from the bond counsel that while Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, and Goldman Sachs are the lead managers, that they do plan on assembling a selling group with a significant other cadre of investment banking firms to perhaps address some of the concerns you're raising. The transaction was originally scheduled to price in January and close in February because of some things which I'll mention in my information that I wanted to share in a little bit. That the schedule has probably been accelerated to close by the end of the year. And so, I would be happy to, once I am told who the selling group is, I'd be happy to send an email to maybe Zach, send it to you, and you can pass on with the commission members or whoever you want me to, and let you know who the selling group is. But I think that should address that concern with having a more robust selling group.
Yeah, I mean, I would be pushed back just slightly on that, in that the selling group, by the time the selling group is formed, it's sort of at the end of the transaction, and their purpose is more distribution in terms of the bonds on the market, and so they don't necessarily influence the pricing unless they can't sell the bonds on the market. And so it's not quite the same, but it is a good it's a good response, I guess I'd say. I appreciate the consideration, the effort to try to accommodate that. But I'll just say, it's in the best interest of the hospital to have a grouping on the front end, a grouping of underwriters and an FA that will really give you, because remember, the FA represents the hospital. The Goldman Sachs and BAML represent their interests. They represent bonds and making money on the capital market. The FA represents your interests, and so they can look at that scale and say, that's high based on this bond that just sold in whatever part of the country with the same structure, and give you feedback. Goldman's not going to care about that. They're going to care about their pricing, the money they make off the transaction. So you really can lose a material amount of money with a transaction this size. I'm sure the hospital is sophisticated to understand that, but I see this a lot. Oftentimes folks kind of just dismiss it. They just want the revenue, the funds, so they can do the capital projects they want to do, and they miss that really thoughtful planning piece. And if you do that over a series of transactions, it really becomes an amount that you say, wow. And why this is important, last thing I'll say about it, because ultimately it transfers into healthcare costs, and ultimately they got to generate that revenue somewhere to pay those bonds. And so I just want us to be thoughtful, and I know we're just the conduit issuer. I know we're just the sort of pass-through of this, but I just want to send a message to all of those conduit folks that, look, we need to be more thoughtful about this in general. And I'll just say, I'd love to meet with the folks with Trinity at some point, the finance team, and just give my feedback, free of charge, of course, about this, because I really do think in the big scheme of things, it's material.
That's a point well taken, absolutely.
And I think I would add to that, and I think the bottom line might be missed, and this is not my area of expertise, admitted. As all of these come through to us, and we have typically not asked these questions because we didn't have Kevin's expertise in this arena, but understanding it a little better now, I wonder if when some of the groups that we've passed these bonds on just routinely have come to us for public funding on their projects,
Good point.
It hits us in a way that we wonder, had they now saved some funds on these transactions, would they have needed to come to us and other public funders for taxpayer dollars to fund a project or this project or that project? And I think bottom line for me, that's what I am concerned about. And I hadn't thought about that, Kevin, until you mentioned the last one that came through. And we have been asked, and the city have been asked, and other public funders have been asked for funds for things.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, and it's just, wondering as we're having this discussion in the public about that. So I just bring that up.
Sure. Not to address financings that you've already approved, but I wasn't here for the hearing for Nationwide Children's, but hopefully my colleague mentioned that Nationwide Children's did have a financial advisor as well. Was that mentioned? Good. Okay. So to provide some backstop or double check.
In a sense of how our residents would feel knowing that we're approving this that doesn't affect us directly, and yet it could affect taxpayers.
Sure. And I think, I don't want to make too many generalizations, but I think most transactions like this of any size, typically the hospital or the higher educational facility or whoever it is, the conduit borrower, typically does have a financial advisor to look over the shoulder for the investment bankers and make sure there is good execution. So I think that now at some point the transaction gets too small. If you're doing a $3 million transaction for a YMCA, financial advisor may not be money well spent. But But I think most transactions, to address your point, Commissioner Boyce, yeah, I think it wasn't true a number of years ago, but I think now it's pretty much universal, as I think through, in my mind, the more recent transactions, that there is a financial advisor involved to make sure there is good execution by the senior managers.
Yeah, that's why it's peculiar that it's not listed on the project team. And that's exactly why it jumped out to me that it wasn't there.
Yeah, I'll mention that for the future. Again, we're Hospital Commissions Council, but I'll make sure that going forward that they do add a line, and maybe we add a line to the form of the executive
Sure.
summary.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I just want to I take 1 second to just double down on Commissioner Brown's point, because I think it's a really critical point. You know, as we and for the listening public, you know, there's a lot of technical stuff, but at the same time, at the heart of what I'm talking about is the way Commissioner Brown articulated it, and that's that, you know, at some point the hospital may or may not come to us and say, hey, can you support us on this project? And I think it's safe to say we're supportive of the transaction, so I don't want you to feel that we're not supportive here.
Sure.
But we also are in a position where then we have to think, you know, when we're sharing the public resources with entities like a hospital, there has to be a public purpose, and we have to know that this is their sort of last stop, and they you know, got to fill this gap. But it's hard to do that when you see places where, well, maybe they could have got this money elsewhere. And here's an example, and you know, again, I've not done the analysis to really know that it's material. But I would say, just in my professional experience, that and I have a lot of it. I would tell you, particularly those two verbs, you know, they are out for their interest, and they're supposed to be. They got to make money, and they're not going to price the bonds in a way that, you know, they're going to price them to sell. And so, without that sort of grouping, it's very difficult to judge it as a best pricing possible. Now, at the end of the day, you have to look at the market. You can tell, but it's really important to not miss any small element, because in a sizable transaction, a few basis points could be meaningful, you know, and could translate into the, as Commissioner Brown put it, it could translate into $250,000 you come back and ask us for to do a boulevard improvement of some sort near the entrance or something that, you know, well, there it is right there, you know. So again, not implying that that's what's happening here, just saying that we're thinking in the broader context.
Sure.
And we love the hospital. You guys are doing great work, and I think we're supportive of this, but I know I am. But we want to be thoughtful about it, and then from a conduit standpoint, to say we're going to sign off, I think would not be inaccurate. You know, just things coming through because they're passed through. So we'll give these a little more scrutiny, and you should expect that. And but in the context of partners, you know, we want the best for the hospital and for the community. So so I think I've said enough about that. So if there are no further comments or questions, move for passage of 797-17.
Second.
Moved and second in voting. Commissioner Boyce?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Grady?
Yes.
Resolution number 797-17 has been adopted.
Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you. If you could indulge me for a second, I just want to mention something else that might come up. As I mentioned, and as Zach, I'm sure, and Nick are aware, the tax bill that was adopted or that was introduced or unveiled last Thursday have a number of provisions. One of those provisions is that effective December 31st, you know, all 501c3 organizations would no longer be able to borrow tax exempt for their exempt purpose, which means financings for hospitals, nonprofit senior living facilities, higher educational facilities, affordable housing, other P3 initiatives would go away. And in addition, and as I mentioned to Nick in an email, they also would end advance refundings for all transactions which would adversely affect cities, counties, states, etc. And I'll try to have this discussion without making any editorial comments, but one of the things that I mentioned to the Hospital Commission was that in light of that, they might see some activity the remainder of the year that we hadn't expected until Thursday afternoon. And so my understanding, I had a phone call last night with bond counsel for the Trinity transaction, the one you just approved, where, because of the uncertainty with what's going to happen with tax-exempt finance, so I may be teaching history next year, they are going to, one, accelerate this transaction.
Yeah.
In addition, we may be asked to assist with getting approval, host approval, for another up to $150 million of additional improvements at the same sites of Mount Carmel that are part of this transaction, but which would be folded into the Michigan transaction. As you know, on occasion, that we have financed facilities in Franklin County through the Michigan issuer for different reasons. I talked to bond counsel last night, and there are some tax and logistical reasons why it makes more sense to fold that additional amount into the Michigan transaction. It would basically, as I understand it last night, it would finance improvements at the campuses that are already part of this transaction, but for a longer period, up to 3 years. So I have not talked to the Hospital Commission yet about this. I need to follow up with them to see what we need to do, what they would like to do to proceed. There is a process in place for the situations like this where Franklin County is not the issuer, but the facilities are located in Franklin County. So I'll be sending an email. Typically, I would send the email to Nick, you, and Frank, and Tom. Maybe Zach, I'll include you as well, so you're in the loop on behalf of the county, and go from there. But we may be back.
I think that's an excellent summary. It would be valuable, I think. Does the firm have a write-up on its
came out yesterday afternoon, and I'll make, if it did.
Could get that to us, because I think we should be thoughtful and proactive with other conduit issuers, just to make sure we're communicating with them in case they're trying to move. It's getting a little late in the year, but it's still it's possible. There's still a window to do something if they need to, and so it'd be great to be able to take that document and forward it to some folks or share it.
We have reached out to all of our significant borrower clients, and as well as our public finance. Obviously, I do primarily conduit finance, but the other half of the firm does governmental financing. So it's not just the conduit borrowers, but I hope that the county is part of an effort. I'm sure there are governmental entities, whether it's National League of Cities or state, associations, that are getting the word out to representatives and senators about what an impact this legislation would be. And part of the issue is because it's being done so quickly and so late in the year, there's limited time to react.
So will you forward that to?
Be glad to.
Get
be great.
it to
Thank
us. It would be very helpful.
Be glad to.
So that we can do what we need to do on our end.
Sure. Great. Be glad to. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for the bad. Sorry about the bad news.
Resolution number 798-17, resolution authorizing non-general fund appropriation adjustments for the wireless 911 fund.
Good morning, Commissioners. Zach Tularic with the Franklin County Office of Management and Budget. Franklin County is responsible for the administration of wireless 911 governmental assistance funds received from the Ohio Department of Taxation. The source of this funding is a subscriber fee of 25 cents per month on each wireless telephone number. This resolution will authorize supplemental appropriations of $130,000 based on an updated funding formula approved by the Franklin County 911 Planning Committee on October 25th. This would provide an additional disbursement to the City of Westerville before the end of the year. Pending any questions, would ask your approval of this resolution.
If there are no comments or questions, move for passage 798-17.
Second.
Moved and second in voting. Commissioner Boyce?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Grady?
Yes.
Resolution number 798-17 has been adopted.
Antoine, are there any journalizations?
Yes, there's one from Economic Development and Planning. A municipal annexation petition, ANX-23-17, was filed with the Franklin County Economic Development and Planning Department on November 1st, 2017. The petition is requesting to annex 11.3 acres from Franklin Township to the City of Columbus. The petition will be considered by the Board of Commissioners on November 21st, 2017, site 2090 Frank Road.
All right.
And
We have another resolution.
Resolution number 799-17, resolution of the Franklin County Board of Commissioners to convene into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending or imminent court action.
You need to read it.
Move to convene into an executive session to confer with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are subject of the pending and imminent court action.
Second.
Moved and seconded voting. Commissioner Boyce?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Grady?
Yes.
Commissioner Lennon, executive session.
All right, that concludes our business for today. We're going to go into executive session. We'll see everybody next week.
Where is executive?